Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao programa semanal que representa uma parceria entre a emissora norte-americana The Real News com Brasil 247. Meu nome é Brian Mier e hoje eu vou apresentar uma reportagem, uma entrevista sobre as eleições primárias pelo Partido Democrata estadunidense para a presidência. O vencedor dessa rodada das eleições é quem vai enfrentar Donald Trump para presidente dos Estados Unidos. E nós todos sabemos que essa eleição é importante para a gente, porque pode representar um fim ao relacionamento estranho que está desenvolvendo entre a família Bolsonaro e a família do Donald Trump, os supremacistas brancos europeus liderados pelo Steve Bannon. A situação das eleições estadunidenses é complicada. Apesar de toda fama que os Estados Unidos têm como país de liberdade, a gente sabe que isso não é o caso. Os Estados Unidos não têm eleições livres, pois os candidatos são quase todos financiados pelo setor privado. Muitos dos candidatos estão no bolsa completa da indústria farmacêutica, por exemplo. E essa é uma das razões porque os Estados Unidos não têm sistema de saúde universal e gratuito, como o resto do mundo, inclusive o Brasil. Os Estados Unidos não tem SUS. Esse ano, em parte, em meu análise, pelo surgimento de uma ala esquerda dentro do Partido Democrata, que na sua maioria é completamente neoliberal, ideologicamente alinhado com tipo Fernando Henrique Cardoso, PSDB e tal, o crescimento da popularidade dos democratas da ala progressista, ou chamado os Democratic Socialists, assusta a liderança do partido. Eles lançam muitas candidaturas esse ano. Tem 20 candidatos para a presidência só pelo Partido Democrata. É o recorde. É tantos candidatos que os debates são divididos em 2 noites, com 10 pessoas no palco cada noite. É uma situação estranha, porque é todo do mesmo partido. Agora, muitos desses candidatos parece que não servem função nenhuma. Só para tirar tempo dos candidatos da esquerda, como Bernie Sanders, nos debates, porque não tem chance de ganhar. Tem vários candidatos no palco que está com menos de 1% nas pesquisas. Mas eu vou falar um pouco sobre os 4 que, pelo meu análise, têm uma chance de vencer as eleições. Primeiro, tem o Joe Biden, representando os democratas corporativos, conservador, a ala mais conservadora dentro do partido. Ele votou contra a desegregação no final do apartheid nos Estados Unidos. Ele é uma pessoa que apoiou a desregularização dos bancos, que criou a crise mundial econômica de 2008. Ele apoia o estado cárcere. Se você procurar no Google Biden's Creepy Hands, você vai ver um monte de fotos dele passando mal em mulheres, em crianças, com um mal bobo, que ninguém consegue explicar direito. Okay? Então, se ele vence, pode ter certeza que nas eleições entre Trump e ele, não vai ter nenhum debate sobre direitos de mulher, sobre Me Too, ele também, porque os dois são envolvidos em escândalos. Porém, ele está liderando nas pesquisas agora. O segundo mais popular candidato é o Bernie Sanders, que passou a vida dele dentro do Partido Socialista estadunidense e depois independente. Ele foi um excelente prefeito progressista de uma cidade chamada Burlington, Vermont, senador, e quase ganhou nas eleições passadas, se não fosse pela sabotagem que aconteceu pelo aparato do Partido Democrata. Além do Sanders, tem Elizabeth Warren. Ela é uma senadora do Massachusetts, que ela tem um programa bastante interessante pelo ponto de vista dos Estados Unidos. Dentro dos Estados Unidos, ela é da esquerda. Ela está querendo regularizar os abusos do setor bancário, ela está querendo garantir universidade pública gratuita, universal para a população, saúde pública universal, estilo SUS, tipo, para a população que não existe nos Estados Unidos ainda, é um problema muito grande. Só que se você começar a analisar que ela está falando sobre política externa, é problemática. Ela, por exemplo, apoiou o golpe, a tentativa do golpe em Venezuela. Ela chamou Nicolás Maduro do autoritário. Ela não dá indicação nenhuma que vai fazer qualquer coisa para mudar a política da guerra sem fim, que foi iniciada depois do 11 de setembro pelo George Bush Jr. E a quarta candidata que tem uma chance de vencer nas eleições é Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris se posiciona como uma pessoa economicamente alinhada um pouco com os progressistas, só que socialmente é mais conservadora. E uma combinação estranha, porque ela foi a procuradora pública do estado da Califórnia por muitos anos, em uma época quando eles estavam utilizando o trabalho escravo dos prisioneiros, que eles ainda estão de fato, né? Quando tem um incêndio florestal, eles mandam os prisioneiros para combater e pagam eles 11 centavos por hora. Então, felizmente, outro candidato chamado Tulsi Gabbard começa a cobrar Kamala sobre isso. Mas, por enquanto, ela está com mais ou menos 10% nas pesquisas. Pelo meu análise, são os 4 que têm a chance de vencer as eleições. Agora tem mais 16, que ninguém sabe o que ele está fazendo lá, de fato, né? Para explicar isso todo, The Real News fez uma entrevista com 2 especialistas em política norte-americana, que você vai ver daqui a pouco. Eu acho bastante interessante. Enquanto as eleições aproximam, eu vou ficar falando mais e mais sobre esse assunto, porque é importante para o Brasil, sim. Porque dos 4 candidatos que têm uma chance de enfrentar Trump, só um está dando solidariedade para Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Só um é abertamente criticando Jair Bolsonaro. E esse candidato é Bernie Sanders. Então, eu espero que vocês gostem do programa e boa tarde para todos e todas de vocês.
So I think Democrats win when we run on real solutions, not impossible promises. When we run on things that are workable, not fairy tale economics. And focus on those kitchen table, pocketbook issues that matter to hardworking Americans. Building infrastructure, creating jobs, improving their pay.
Thank you, Congressman.
Creating universal health care, lowering drug prices.
Senator
We can do it.
You know, I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Good to have you with us. Yes, the first Democratic debate, part 1, is done. And as you just saw, I think the heart of this debate, and probably tonight's as well, will be couched in moderate, classic liberal, and progressive views. But at the center of it all really is, it seems to me, the internal struggle inside the Democratic Party on how best to take on Donald Trump. From healthcare to working families to the Green New Deal to foreign policy, we clearly saw different visions. The moderators seem to want to push former Congressman John Delaney far ahead for some reason and seem to, from the questions, push back on Sanders and Warren and force a fight. But the Democrats didn't do that. They worked hard to show some unity, I thought. So what does all that really mean? And what's our takeaways from last night's debate? We're joined right now by Jeet Heer. Jeet Heer is the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine and has written for numerous things. It's national affairs correspondent, for The Nation, and who's done many, many pieces for The New Republic, The New Yorker, The Boston Globe, and many other publications. And author of In Love with Art, Francois Mouly's Adventures in Comics with Art Spiegelman, and Sweet Lechery, I love that one, reviews, essays, and profiles. And Dr. Kimberly Moffitt is in the studio. Dr. Kimberly Moffitt is chair of the Language, Literacy, and Culture Studies program at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She's a media critic who often writes on politics and pop culture. And she's co-editor of The Obama Effect 2010, was put out in the forthcoming volume, FLOTUS Effect, Reflections on the Platform, Presence, and Agency of Michelle Obama. And welcome back. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
So what I want to know first from the two of you is why were all the Jews on the first night and all people of color on the second night? What is that about? No comment?
Well, it's the luck of the draw. But,
luck of the draw.
Try not to be suspicious. It tried not to be suspicious.
Absolutely.
I also have to say that there's a meme going around on Twitter where people are saying Bernie is too loud, and I will now say that is an anti-Semitic trope.
Yeah, I think that's so. It's a very strange thing, but getting into seriously here, let's talk about what I opened this up with, which is where I think the heart of this debate is, which had to do with how you take on Trump, and whose views were what on these different issues and how they approached it. So let's look at this short piece, and we can kind of play with this for a moment. Let's look at this.
Look at the story of Detroit, this amazing city that we're in. This city is turning around because the government and the private sector are working well together. That has to be our model going forward. I'm as big of a dreamer and an entrepreneur as anyone, but I also believe we need to have solutions that are workable.
He talks about solutions that are workable. We have tried the solution of Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance. And what have the private insurance companies done? They've sucked billions of dollars out of our healthcare system. They've made everybody fill out dozens and dozens of forms. Why? Not because they're trying to track your health care. They just want one more excuse to say no. Insurance companies do not have a God-given right to suck money out of our healthcare system.
Thank you. So win this election and to defeat Donald Trump, which, by the way, in my view, is not going to be easy. We need to have a campaign of energy and excitement and of vision. We need to bring millions of young people into the political process in a way that we have never seen.
I think when we have a guy in the White House that has now told over 10,000 lies, that we better be very straightforward with the American people. Do I think that we're going to vote to give free college to the wealthiest kids? No, I don't think we're going to do that. So that's what I'm talking about. But what I don't like about this argument right now, what I don't like about it at all, is that we are more worried about winning an argument than winning an election.
So part of it is being set up here clearly is these different visions. It seems like the progressive movement in this country has really pushed the Democratic Party on some things. So everybody we'll talk about later in this conversation about health care is for Medicare for all, but in different stages and ways of parsing it. So what about how they handled this last night and what you thought, Kimberly, start with you, just what you thought about what this divide said and what this means for taking on Trump?
Yeah, I think it's what I found most interesting is even though Trump was not in the room, he was certainly very much a part of the conversation, even when they weren't calling him by name, because so much of what the Democratic candidates are doing right now is trying to respond to much of what he has said or has not said. But what I would also say last night, what we saw most is the clear divide between those candidates that are seen as more progressive or named progressives versus those that are more moderate. And that speaks again to where the Democrats are in terms of understanding their identity and who they are, because they're not quite ready to stake a claim to say this is who we are and this is where we stand, because they are really worried about what does that do in terms of their possible voters and where they stand, and will we lose them or will we gain more voters depending on the stances we take.
Jeet?
Yeah, I think that the part of it is also CNN. It's a network. They want ratings, and creating drama helps them. So they really try to I think it's the old slogan of Popeye's friend Wimpy, let's you and him fight.
I saw that in your piece you wrote for The Nation. That was very funny. Yeah.
That's right. And so they elevated this figure, John Delaney, who as far as I could tell is polling at under 1%. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, just to give you an idea how obscure this guy is, he has 26,000 Twitter fans, and I have 200,000 Twitter fans. So why am I not on that debate stage?
Wait a minute, Jeep, why weren't you on the stage last night?
And then they elevated this figure and made him as it's probably because Joe Biden was not there. And it's really a debate between, Biden versus Warren and Sanders. So they made Delaney the proxy for Biden.
Right, and the debate is between those three plus, I think, Kamala Harris. I mean,
Harris as
right?
well. Yeah,
I think that is it.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, you would have those four figures arguing it out on stage, but because there's so many people running, that this is how they've done it. And so I think that what's interesting is that Warren and Sanders both laid out the sort of real case, not just in policy terms, but in electoral terms, for being more visionary. That to say that this is actually how you draw voters. This is how you get young people involved in the election. This is how you get those voters that are more marginal into the electoral process. And I think that's a very compelling argument.
Well, let's take a look at this other piece here. I mean, this kind of also goes to the heart of what I think the arguments were last night, with Tim Ryan and others talking about working class families and the economy and where that takes the Democrats and where that takes America. Because I think clearly they were really, most of them were like kind of on point in terms of taking on Trump. But let's watch this.
I think President Trump was onto something when he talked about China. So I think we need some targeted response against China. But you know how you beat China? You outcompete them. And that's why I put a chief manufacturing officer in place to make sure that we rebuild the manufacturing base. We've got to fill these factories that in Detroit and Youngstown that used to make cars and steel. We've got to fill them with workers who are making electric vehicles, batteries, charging stations, make sure they're making solar panels.
I'm the only one running for president who actually supports the Trans-Pacific Partnership. President Obama was right about that. We should be getting back in that.
For decades, we have had a trade policy that has been written by giant multinational corporations to help giant multinational corporations. They have no loyalty to America. They have no patriotism. If they can save a nickel by moving a job to Mexico, they'll do it in a heartbeat. I have put out a new comprehensive plan that says we're not going to do it that way. We're going to negotiate our deals with unions at the table, with small businesses at the table, with small farmers at the table, with environmentalists at the table, with human rights activists at the table.
We will hold China accountable, but we will bring our allies and friends like the European Union to bear, and we'll also negotiate trade deals that favor farmers and American workers and protect human rights and the environment and labor, not just here in the United States, but in those countries. Thank you very much. Senator Sanders, please.
You're looking, I believe, at the only member of Congress who not only voted against these disastrous trade agreements, NAFTA, PNTR with China, which cost us over 4 million jobs.
You're not going to win against China in a trade war when they've got 25% of our total debt, but tariffs are not the solution.
So, I'm curious how both you think this is going to play and how it's going to play out in the coming election. Because this is part of heart of the debate. Has always been with Democrats about how you rebuild the economy, how you do trade deals, taking on Trump for his tariffs. So how does this really play out? I mean, how wonky can you get, as Williamson would say, and what does this really mean for the body politic?
I mean, I definitely think that this is to distinguish themselves from the Republicans, or at least from Trump's policies, where Trump has been very pro-business and believing that he is protecting American jobs and the American people by supporting businesses and the decisions that they do, but also instituting tariffs, for example, tariffs, in hopes of maintaining those industries here in the U.S. And I think what many of the Democrats, at least the majority last night, were trying to convey is their desire to focus and center on the people. And the hope is that if we're talking about the people, the real individuals who are at the table for all of these discussions, that that's what's going to win voters, that they will then see the Democrats as committed to them and not these big industries.
Jeet, go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that one of the things that Warren and Sanders both did very effectively is to recast the trade debate as not only America versus China, but to introduce that element of big business, that the trade agreements were really written by corporations and benefited corporations in many ways. And this is a real change for the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats have been the party under Clinton and Obama of NAFTA, of TPP. And so I think that we're really seeing the Democrats breaking from that trade consensus. I mean, if you have, only John Delaney is your defender of the free trade consensus, then I think it's dead. I mean, sorry, John Delaney.
but how does it, before we go to the next topic here, how does that play out with the American people, though, do you think? I mean, and who buys into what they were saying, and why?
Yeah, but that's part of what I think the Democratic Party is dealing with now is they don't have the identity, the solid identity to say who they are and what they represent and dig their heels in and squarely say, this is where we stand. They're still trying to figure it out. They're still looking to understand the pulse of the American people to say which of these areas will garner us the most votes and support so that we can beat Trump. And I don't think they figured it out yet.
I mean, one of the things, the other night I had a conversation with Valerie about this, and she said if the Democrats somebody could find a way to make a true multiracial working class organization, that might grab the American public. And they're trying to figure out how to do that, they just can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's right, yeah. Although, I mean, I think that if we actually look at like the coalition that Bernie Sanders is putting together, it does look quite multiracial. I think it's interesting that Bernie often polls as the second most popular candidate among both white and black voters. So that's pretty significant if he can hold that together.
When we get to one of our final segment, we're going to talk about Bernie and race and the rest. But let me take a very quick look at this, and so we can take a very quick conversation here about the foreign policy and where that takes us. And it's an interesting back and forth, especially with Elizabeth Warren at this moment, talking about how we use nuclear weapons and her interchange with Governor Bullock.
The United States is not going to use nuclear weapons preemptively, and we need to say so to the entire world. Our military is the best on earth, but we should not be asking our military to take on jobs that do not have a military solution. We need to use our diplomatic tools, our economic tools, and if we're going to send someone into war, we better have a plan for how we're going to get them out on the other end.
Never, I hope, certainly in my term or anyone else, would we really even get close to pulling that trigger. Going from a position of strength, we should be negotiating down so there aren't nuclear weapons. But drawing those lines in sand at this point, I wouldn't do.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Warren, your response?
Look, we don't expand trust around the world by saying, we might be the first ones to use a nuclear weapon. That puts the entire world at risk and puts us at risk right in the middle of this. At a time when Donald Trump is pulling out of our nuclear negotiations, expanding the opportunities for nuclear proliferation around the world, has pulled us out of the deal in Iran, and Iran is now working on its nuclear weapon. The world gets closer and closer to nuclear warfare. We have to have an announced policy that is one the entire world can live with.
And right after that, Bullock responded, I'm not going to let Detroit, I'm not going to let Detroit be the first place to be hit, and then we respond. But this, to me, goes to the heart of a really classic old argument that has never really gone head-to-head in this major way publicly inside this country and Democrats about nuclear power and weapons. So how do both of you read this? Jeet.
Well, I thought that Warren has traditionally not been strong on foreign policy, so I thought it's really a good moment for her to lay that out and to lay out a sort of compelling vision. And I think it is absolutely true that one of the dangers, not just of Trump, but of American foreign policy, is that it's been encouraging nuclear proliferation. Because if you look at it, Saddam Hussein didn't have nuclear weapons and he got invaded. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons and he got overthrown. And Iran signed a nuclear deal and now the U.S. pulled out of it and threatened it. Whereas North Korea got nuclear weapons and Trump is best buddies with Kim Jong-un. So the message that America's been sending to the world is if you want to be a strong power, you should get nukes. And I think this whole, policy of America not renouncing first strike is part of that. It really creates a world where it makes a lot of sense for everyone to have nukes. And I think Warren is right that, we have to move away from that.
She's calling for real diplomacy instead of this feigned attempt to pretend that we're interested in diplomacy, but yet we continue to proliferate nuclear weapons. And so she, at one point when she was having this discussion, it was a clear divide between kind of the old U.S. cowboy ruggedness of we are in charge and we are in control and we are the strong power versus another potential leader who is saying to us, express, yes, we can be strong, but we can also work together to make sure that the end of the world does not come under our thumb.
And we'll see how that plays in the macho ethos that we have in this country.
Absolutely,
pretty deeply, right?
absolutely, because I wondered if gender played a role in how she decided to approach this versus what many of the candidates on stage with her didn't say.
Really strong point.
Yeah.
Final point here before we take a stop and come to another topic, two other topics here. Let's look at this piece about Afghanistan, which I thought was interesting. Very quickly, we'll talk about this.
Will you withdraw all U.S. service members by the end of your first year in office?
We will withdraw. We have to.
In your first year?
Yes. Look, we're pretty close to the day when we will wake up to the news of a casualty in Afghanistan who was not born on 9/11. We need to talk not only about the need for a president committed to ending endless war, but the fact that Congress has been asleep at the switch. And on my watch, I will propose that any authorization for the use of military force have a 3-year sunset.
I would, in my first term in office, agree that there is nothing about perpetuating this war already in its 18th year that will make it any better. We've satisfied the reasons for our involvement in Afghanistan in the first place. And it's time to bring those service members back home from Afghanistan, but also from Iraq, also from Yemen and Somalia and Libya and Syria. There is no reason for us to be at war all over the world tonight. As president, I will end those wars, and we will not start new wars. We will not send more U.S. service members overseas to sacrifice their lives.
And we also, and Hickenlooper in that exchange also said, in a sense, we owe it to the Afghanis not to just walk away, Afghan people,
That's right.
not just walk away and leave them in the lurch. And so that's another piece of the argument, I think. But Obama couldn't do it.
That's right. That's right.
Trump feigned like he was going to do it. So something is keeping people stuck there. So your analysis here for a minute before we move on.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's a lot more difficult than what people think. And so the idea of bringing our troops home sounds like a lovely idea, but in terms of logistically pulling it off and what it means in terms of those areas like Hickenlooper mentioned, what happens to those regions when we completely pull out, that all of those considerations are taken under advice. And I think individuals like Obama realize that upon hearing all that information, this is not as easy as what we think. And so Buttigieg, although I think it was a shining moment for him when he addressed this point, it does feel sort of short-sighted to talk about being able to pull this off within the first year of his term.
Jeet, how do you see it?
Yeah, I thought Mayor Pete had a good moment in the sense that he really brought up a really crucial issue, which is that Congress has abdicated. I mean, basically after 9/11, there was a sort of like a blank check that was given to presidents to launch wars, and that blank check is still there. I mean, Trump is arguing that he could launch a war with Iran tomorrow if he wanted to, and so I think there really has to be a fundamental reset, but it's going to be very, very hard to do because American foreign policy is so dependent on the military. Like America has put all its eggs in this military basket. So it's very hard to actually achieve American ends through diplomacy because if you have a hammer, that's all you know how to use, and you hammer everything. The American military has become a hammer.
It's become a hammer. I think it's very difficult for most people unless they are actually libertarian or on the left in terms of the arguments they make to really talk about problems with having a military that's all over the world, and that has always been an issue. And I didn't see a great diversion here other than what Warren said. But we're here. You heard Jeet here, who's the national affairs correspondent for The Nation, and we're here with Dr. Kimberly Moffitt, who's a media critic and chair of the department at UMBC. And this is the first segment, because we're going to tackle healthcare and immigration in another segment. So you'll want to think about what we said here, let us know, and in the next one, you want to watch it. I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network.